to the International Gaming Standard Association Conversations. GSA Conversations are just that, conversations between various gaming industry professionals discussing a specific topic. They're intended to be informative and to generate questions. I'm Peter de Raad, IGSA's president, and together today we have Mark Pace, Managing Director of GSA Europe. Hello, Mark.
Hello.
Today's conversation topic is an introduction to one of GSA's reporting standards, which can be of significant value to both regulators and suppliers, the Regulatory Reporting Interface, or the RRI standard. GSA will also be hosting a 1-hour Zoom session with Q&A on how GSA standards make data reporting more efficient. But for today, let's discuss the regulatory reporting across various gaming verticals. Mark, I think that depending on where you are in the world, when you say gaming or gambling, people immediately think of a specific type of activity. In some cases, they may think of Las Vegas-style casinos, but in other cases, they may think of online gaming, horse racing, or even sports betting.
Yeah, I agree with you, Peter. I mean, without context, saying gaming or gambling can mean all those activities you just described, plus other things like maybe esports or lotteries.
Well, I know that each of those, Mark, types of gaming have some sort of system that provides information which regulators need to provide the appropriate oversight. But they must vary greatly.
Yeah, that's true. Each of those gaming activities, have evolved over time, and the type of systems and even basic things like the type of data and the frequency of that data transmission, they vary pretty greatly.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, even in just the land-based casino sector, there are different systems where data has to be aggregated and audited before it's shared with the regulators.
Right, and you use the word sector. Sometimes we refer to them as verticals. It doesn't really matter as long as, I guess, you understand that while they're all gaming, how they work, and the data they generate, how it is supported, it's really different across those gaming sectors or verticals.
Well, that must make it quite challenging for regulators who may have to provide oversight to more than one of those verticals. Right?
And that's specifically why GSA started working on the Regulatory Reporting Interface standard.
But I thought that the Regulatory Reporting Interface, or RRI, was just for online gaming.
Well, certainly the reporting standard originated within the GSA Online Gaming Committee, or the OGC. And quite frankly, it was because as online gaming platform suppliers got licensed in multiple gaming jurisdictions, especially in places like Europe, they ran into a reporting issue. At the end of the day, what was happening is that every jurisdiction wanted different data in different formats and at different reporting timeframes. So even though the games were the same, the reporting requirements were all over the place. And this meant that the suppliers had to modify their platforms to conform to each jurisdiction's requirements and modify them again, whenever those requirements changed.
Yeah, that seems quite inefficient, especially since, as you said, a game made available across jurisdictions is the same regardless of the jurisdiction.
Absolutely right. So the idea was to create a single reporting interface standard that would expose every data element that A, regulators were interested in, and B, that could be provided by those games, and then allow a reporting tool to be configured rather than recoded or reprogrammed to meet a specific regulator's requirements.
Yeah, I see how that helps in the selection of data to be sent, but how does RRI address the formatting and the frequency?
Okay, so to answer that, and it's a good question, we'll start with RRI creates a menu or provides a menu of what we call data elements. That's every piece of data that can be shared, right? And again, which regulators are interested in. And that's how the data is formatted. And then as far as frequency goes, RRI supports real-time, near real-time, and periodic reporting.
So what if, say, a new game is introduced that generates additional or new data elements?
Sure, that's no problem at all. I mean, new data elements can be added without requiring any recoding of either RRI or the supplier's reporting tool. The regulator's code, in kind of how RRI works, it will be updated to identify that a new data element or elements are required, and what the order is. And then as long as the supplier's system has the data, it will just fetch it and be able to send it.
Well, that sounds like a great solution, but where did the land-based and lottery data come in, Mark?
Well, interestingly enough, as the initial work on RRI was ongoing, we received input from a number of regulators and suppliers that this reporting issue was not just specific to online gaming. In fact, it was happening, in other gaming verticals. On top of that, what we also learned is that there was another issue that, again, we thought RRI could in fact address, and that was that in more and more jurisdictions, the same regulators are being asked to take on the responsibility of overseeing multiple gaming verticals.
Mm-hmm.
You can imagine the challenge of gathering, aggregating, and evaluating data coming in from different systems in different formats without any standardized data element names and at different frequencies. I mean, it's a madhouse.
Well, that's quite a challenge. I mean, I would imagine that some gaming verticals also have different tax schemes.
Absolutely. And then, the regulators asked us, is there a way to sort of standardize all of this? And RRI to us seemed like a natural fit.
Yeah, I see how it would.
Now, RRI can provide a really good solution for a number of reasons. And I think it's worthwhile maybe taking a minute and going through them. So it does this by first creating what I called a menu. It's really a standardized set of data element definitions. What each data element is, what type it is, in other words, is it alphanumeric or numeric, how many characters long each data element is, and even whether it's a required data element or not, right? The next thing it does is it creates an order in which the data is going to be provided. And then lastly, it talks about the frequency. So even though the data comes from different systems, it comes into the regulator system as one standardized data feed.
Well, that sounds great for the regulator, but doesn't that mean that the suppliers have to change their systems?
Now, not necessarily. So like I said earlier, right, the online systems have been already all set up to send data. So it's not really a new issue there. The suppliers will code their reporting to the RRI standard once, and then they're done for any jurisdiction that adopts RRI. Now, for some older systems, instead of changing the existing code, the suppliers can write a bit of an interface. The interface would use RRI and get the data, get the list of data elements, the order and the frequency from the regulator system. And then again, it can fetch the data that is required from the existing, I'll call them legacy systems, and just reorder the data using the interface. I think bottom line, again, that this is a benefit because once they code that interface, it's good for any jurisdiction that's adopted RRI. So it should, at least in theory, right, be much simpler than trying to modify legacy systems to adapt to each jurisdiction's requirements.
Yeah. So essentially, that interface is an adapter between the legacy systems and the regulator's system using the RRI to create standardized reporting.
That's absolutely right, and it just reminded me. I meant to say this while we're calling it the regulatory reporting interface, we're not really creating reports, and by that I mean we're not creating things that have columns and rows and headers and footers and all that stuff. What we're really talking about is the creation of data files. In essence, the regulators can format the data in any way they want to create human readable reports. Now, the other benefit to this is that the regulators can change formats, slice and dice the data any which way they want, and the suppliers don't have to modify their systems.
Yeah, this standard sounds like a significant time and money saver for both the suppliers and regulators, right?
Well, that was really the idea, right? And I think the members of the OGC have done an incredible amount of work in defining the standard.
Yeah, indeed, Mark, and kudos to the OGC members working on the standard. I mean, without those individuals, as you know, that bring their industry experience to the committee and their collaborative work, standards would not get created.
Absolutely, very much so.
So, Mark, just by way of brief summary, the regulatory reporting interface creates standardized definitions of the data elements that are sent from gaming systems to the regulators. It allows the regulators to specify the data elements they want in order and the frequency in which they want them.
Right.
And then the suppliers, as you said, code their reporting tool using RRI once, and they can then meet the requirements of any regulator who has also adopted the RRI standard. And I think finally, the RRI standard also provides a solution for the legacy-based land-based systems and lottery systems, which enables regulators to get a single standard data feed and does not require suppliers to modify the legacy system.
I think that was a great summary, Peter. And one suggestion, perhaps we could maybe dive deeper into RRI in another conversation if that's something that you'd like to do.
Yeah, that would be great, Mark. To our audience, thank you for listening. Please send us your questions and comments by contacting us. Information on doing so can be found at our website, igsa.org. And until the next conversation, thank you.